Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for Chapter 31 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, Sejana enters the lab where their objective is housed and engages 3 members of station security. She kills one and gravely injures the other 2 during a fast firefight, taking only a minor bruising herself. She convinces the 2 scientists present to give her access to the system and releases the nerve agent into the station ventilation system, rendering the top half of the refinery unconscious. The team ascends to the executive level and takes the leaders of the Skaza Mining Consortium into custody, calling for the surrender of all personnel and the cessation of all hostilities. Once the destroyer is neutralized, a larger force of Gyda troops land and secure the station. Sejana and the drop troopers are pulled back to the Alabaster, and they start to head back to Gyda. Well, it certainly has been an exciting few hours for Sejana aboard the Mining Consortium's refinery, but let's take a moment to check in with the rest of the crew before she returns. The Howlin Wolf is towed to the massive orbital station that houses the Gyda Protectorate. The Alabaster releases it and turns away, engaging thrust and an out-system trajectory. Ayati and Einar watch the departure on the bridge's quick screen. Ayati turns to the captain and says, "She'll be all right. She always is." He grunts. "I've seen her hurt more in the last month than I've ever seen before." Ayati looks back at the screen. "Yeah, but she's got all that fancy armor on. She'll be fine." They're silent again as small tugs guide the ship into one of the repair bays, large control arms grappling the ship. An umbilical extends to the docking hatch, and Einar shakes his head and says, "Well, I guess we better go make friends and do our part." They meet the station crew, who welcome them with a sort of wary warmth, though Chief Repair Tech Pharaoh is eager to see the damage. Einar gives Ayati a shrug and leads the way to the engine room. It only takes the technicians an hour to review the damage and provide their estimates. Einar gathers Ayati and Luden and says, "The repair crew is getting started, and we've been encouraged to stay out of their way. You two are welcome to enjoy the station. Apparently it's the morning cycle on station, so grab yourself some breakfast and enjoy yourselves." Looking at Ayati, he says, "I'll calm you if I hear anything." "Sure you don't want to come along, Cap?" Ayati asks. "Nah, I'm going to get some sleep." The pilot shrugs and turns to Luden. "All right, just us then." "I already had some food while we were waiting," he replies. "I think maybe I'll walk the station and explore a little." Ayati laughs and says, "Fine, I guess I'll go eat by myself. See y'all later." The station isn't quite what she expects. Once she's off the lift from the repair dock, Ayati finds a bustling concourse full of people. As she moves through the crowd, she feels eyes on her. A few people smile and wave. Others stare openly. And Ayati realizes this place doesn't get a lot of visitors. She finds a small breakfast place called The Repaste, with a few open seats at the bar. The bartender brings her a cup of lab-grown coffee, and she orders off the quick menu displayed along the back wall. Breakfast consists of a few different colored pastes that taste of eggs and sausage. Halfway through the meal, she hears a woman's voice say, "Kaylana, is that you?" Turning to look, she sees a human woman around 40, with dark brown hair cut into a short bob. Ayati stares for a second and then says, "Rez?" The other woman opens her arms wide and the pilot slips out of her seat to embrace her. The two hug for a minute before pulling apart, and Rez looks her over. "Shit, girl, I haven't seen you in ages. Not since you left. How are you?" Ayadi chooses to ignore the unspoken words that Rez restrained and says, I'm doing all right, flying transport out of Casada now. What about you? Last time I saw you were Remixar first class, Resolina Saint-Cher flight maintenance. How did you get out here? Well, that's a bit of a story, Rez says, to which Ayadi gestures to the seat next to hers. Once they're settled in, and Rez has her own drink and food, she says, after the inquiry, I stayed in through to the end of the war. In the uncertainty of the downfall and the fracturing of Imperial forces, I kind of fell into a job with the Skaza Mining Consortium, doing maintenance on their mining drones. They shipped me out here, and I've been in system ever since. When the uprising happened, I was on station at the time, so I kind of got lucky and didn't end up trapped on the refinery with all those poor saps. I've been doing station maintenance since then. She takes a drink of her coffee. It was really bad for a couple of years. The Skaz were real cruel, cutting rations and life support to minimum to preserve their profits. I was happy when the Gyda revolted. I still had another 10 years on my contract. But that's enough about me. What have you been up to? Ayadi leans back in her chair. Well, after I left the Shahastu, I never thought I would fly again. But one of my flight instructors from the academy reached out, heard about what happened, and told me he could get me an introduction to the regional SEU commander. I took it, and within 3 months, they had me flying scout on the edge of known space. Ayadi drains her coffee and waves to the bartender. Rez waits. The bartender comes over and asks if she wants more coffee. Ayadi nods and asks for a shot of the well liquor. She can feel Rez watching her, and the mechanic orders a shot as well. Once they're poured, Ayadi picks it up and stares into it. If you don't want to talk about it, that's okay, Rez ventures. I haven't drank with a vacuum jockey in a while, so you might have to go easy on me. She holds up her glass. Ayadi chuckles, clinks the glass to the other, and shoots it. The burn is almost worse than decompression. She keeps her food down and sets the glass on the bar, top up. The bartender, who is watching her closely, offers a nod and fills it again. Beside her, Rez coughs. Lucent shine. I forgot how bad the rot gut is here. Ayadi takes the second shooter and closes her eyes as the fire sears through her chest into her abdomen. Then she opens her eyes and looks at Rez. I was in the Oberhalis system when the Regular fleet showed up. I was on my way back from a long-range mission when hundreds of ships just started dropping out of the conduit on an unmapped vector. I burned hard to avoid the jump point while my Aster drive charged. They launched fighters to chase me down. Whereas I don't know how I did it, but I evaded 15 fighters for 47 seconds until my drive cleared and I jumped out. Shit, Rez breathes. I had no idea. She gestures to the bartender who pours 2 more shots. Ayadi stares at the third shot in front of her. It took 3 jumps to get to the nearest fleet command. I reported in, resupplied, and they sent me right back the way I came to gather more scans of the fleet. That's basically how I spent the next few years, dropping into systems, never sure if I'd be falling right into a regular picket force. A couple months before the downfall, I was scouting a new nav route for 7th Fleet. They were trying to circumvent Sulfine to drop the fleet in on the Blood Harvest battle group. I dropped out of the conduit on the edge of a regular scout group. Alarms went off and they put 3 plasma lances through my ship before I even registered they were there. All I remember is the cockpit melting around me, the heat and the smell, my own flesh burning. The autopod launched as the next few shots destroyed my ship. Pod stealth systems worked, I guess, because they didn't see me. An Imperial scout frigate picked me up about 2 weeks later. She feels a hand on her shoulder and looks up, blinking the tears away. Pity fills Rez's eyes, and Ayadi brushes the liquid from her own eyes and clears her throat. It took me a few years of reconstructive therapies and rest to get back to fighting shape. I was fortunate. The frigate that picked me up, they joined with Grand Duke Theranovsky's remnant fleet in Casada. That's where I recovered. And then I got a job flying transport for one of the corporations. There's silence for a moment. Then Ayati picks up the shot and says, "Well, Rez, here's to survive in hell." Rez nods and murmurs the words back to her before they both down their shots. "Well," Rez says, "it's so good to see you again, Ayati. Can I show you the station? It's cramped and sometimes chaotic, but it's home, and there are some beautiful views of Gyda." Ayati pays the tab and says, "You know what? I'd love that." Together, they stumble out of the repaste. On a platform near the bottom of the station, Luden Sartan watches this planet spin beneath him. It took a couple hours wandering to find this place, but now that he's here, every minute of that wandering was worth it. He reaches inside his coat and finds the hidden fold, slipping his fingers into the shielded compartment and drawing out the small package within. Unfolding the soft, leathery wrapping, he removes a small volume, eyes scanning the words printed on the cover, the second revelation of Lucent. Reverently, he opens it and begins reading. "The light brightens our way when we walk in its path, but it burns those who flee from it." Taking a deep breath, he closes his eyes and thinks back on the fleet action in the Uragoda system, offering a brief prayer for those souls lost. They deserve that, at least, even if they had fled from the illumination the hierarchy brings. "Is that a real book?" a voice asks, startling Luden out of his reverie. "Oh, shit, sorry," the speaker says. Luden sees an older man leaning against the railing, looking contrite. His eyes flick down to the book, even as his hands rise in a placating gesture. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. I just haven't seen a physical book in a long, long time." Luden turns the book over in his hands so the cover isn't visible and says, "It's all right." The old man gestures towards the planet and says, "Quite a view, eh? You must be from that ship in the repair dock, the out-system trader, right?" Luden nods. There's silence for a moment. Then the old man takes a step closer. "I'm Clev, by the way. I'd love to take a look at your book. I was something of a collector in my youth, but lost them all in the divorce. I'd be willing to trade for it, friend." Wrapping it back in its protective cover, Luden says, "I'm sorry, it was a gift from my grandfather before he died, and it's very special to me." He slips it back into the hidden compartment in his coat and turns to leave. "Well, no need to be rude," the old man says. "You could at least let me hold it. I promise I'm not going to hurt it or anything." Luden keeps walking. "All right, well, fuck you then, boy. No respect." The old man huffs and storms off in the opposite direction. Luden hurries back toward the ship, clutching the space where the book is tucked away. And this time he prays the hierarchy brings the light to this backward place. Einar sits in his quarters, a glass of Trendian brandy gently warming his chest, staring at the ship's manifest. He already checked with the station. None of these goods are much use to the Gyda, and even if they were, they couldn't afford to pay the prices he needs. That means he has to go to Ekolon to unload the cargo and make a profit for the company. But someone on Cassida needs to know about the hierarchy fleet annexing systems, and sooner rather than later. I mean, sure, the trip to Ekolon would take 3 days, plus probably another 3 days to unload the cargo and resupply, and then 3 more days to get back to Cassida. That's going to be 9 days total versus the 6 that it would take to go straight back to Cassida. 3 days. How much damage could the Plyth do in 3 days? Probably a lot, Einar muses, if they wanted to. But what is their goal? If it's to annex the Uragoda system, then 3 days probably doesn't make it much of a difference. But they could probably leave 1 or 2 ships in orbit to hold the planet hostage, while the rest of the fleet continues to the next system. Rinse and repeat, and they've taken up to 3 more systems, including this one, in that time. He takes another sip from the brandy glass and leans his head back against his chair. 3 days could mean the difference between losing his job or the deaths of thousands more. Maybe Mr. Zhang would understand, after all. It's an unwritten rule in Cassida to report anything that might endanger the security of the system as quickly as possible. And that was doubly true for trade ships that were traveling out of system. Sleep takes him before he can decide, and he's woken by his comm chiming. Blinking awake, he glances at the time. It's been about 6 hours. Wiping sleep from his eyes, he opens the comm and sees a message in text. It's from Sejana, and it says, "I'm back." Einar grins. Maybe they will get through this all right, after all. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.